to order the June 19th, 2025 public hearing of the City of Prescott Board of Adjustment. Board member present, please answer. Myself, present, Tony Teeters. Tom Davis.
Here.
Rick Kimmery.
Here.
Mary Frederickson.
Here.
Miriam Hobrick.
Here.
Mark Hoekness.
Here.
And Tom Hutchinson is excused. We have welcome Mr. Mayor and Mr. Gambogi, Councilman Gambogi. Thank you for attending. This is an open public meeting, a public hearing, and is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representative of the public media. The public local cable and/or radio station may also be rebroadcast. Members of the public are required to state their name for the record so that we may know who's speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. And please put your electronic devices on mute or turn them off, please. We also have Jacob Lunn here. My mind. Matt Bertracki. And a sundry of other folks.
That works.
We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand.
Mr. Chair, Mark Hoekness here.
Yes.
Staff has recommended that we change the order of the agenda to do the CUP last. I'll make a motion to make that change.
Do I have a second?
Mary Frederickson, second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? 6-0, it passes. Thank you.
Minutes from May.
To approve the May 15, 2025 Board of Adjustment meeting minutes.
Miriam Hobrick, I move.
Tom Davis, I'll second.
Any comments, changes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Okay, I'm waiting. There it goes. All right. Good morning, Chairman, board members. Kaylee Nunez, Community Planner. So today I am presenting Variance V25-002. And as you'll remember, this came to you in March. The applicant has revised the design. It is a variance to the maximum building height for residential structures. So it's requesting an increase in the allowed height for new single-family residence to 40 feet 6 inches from 35 feet is the max in the code. The last request was for a height of 46 feet. So they have reduced that. Here is a zoning map showing the subject property. It's up at the top of the ranch subdivision in the southwest corner. As you can see, it's bordered by the National Forest to the south and Arizona state land to the west. Here's an aerial map. You can, I still struggle with this. There we go. That's a lot. And then I also felt it prudent to have an aerial map with contours showing the topography. It is a steep lot. Right there, it falls about, do math in my head, 55 feet across the parcel. And so I got some more pictures. This is basically looking at the street from the entrance of the property. And then the second photo would be looking into the entrance from the street, cloud crossing. And then the picture on the left, so I actually went to the cul-de-sac below and took the picture looking up or westwards. And then the photo on the right is looking down on the property to the northeast. So I tried my best to capture the topography via photos. So here's a summary. The request is for a 5-foot 6-inch addition to the height maximum. The property is on a hillside. The average slope I calculated is 30%. I did research other variances requested in the area. I did find one for a residence 3/4 mile away. And it was for a reduced front setback and increasing height by 7 feet. And again, this project was previously heard at the March 20th meeting. The request was for 46 feet and they modified the design to lower the height. And this is from the rear elevation detailing the highest point here, which is 40 foot 6 inches. Here's a site plan. So when I was taking those photos from the entrance, I think their drive, it would be about right here. Oh wait, actually I stand corrected over here. So the structure will be set back on the lot. And then there is a artistic rendering provided by the project architect, Tom Terry. So he is present and so is the property owner, Jeannie McHenry. So again, these are the criteria we review the request against. There are 6 separate criteria. Of course, it's more detailed in the staff report. So that there's a summary of my analysis. The slope does constitute a topographical challenge. The height will be noticeable to adjacent properties. And then special privileges only found 1 variance approved nearby. However, there are likely to be more variance requests in the future because we're seeing this just in Prescott General in the southern portion. The more flat, easy lots are being built out. They've already been built out. So we kind of have more challenging ones left. General plan, it's in conformance with the low medium density designation of the current general plan. And then, so the property owners are challenged by the topography. However, design preferences led to the excess height. We did neighborhood outreach again and did post the site again. Sent the mailings to owners within 300 feet. Also published a notice in the paper. These are all our statutory requirements. And so here we are, recommended action. Move to approve, deny, or approve with conditions V25-002. And I am open for any questions. And again, we have the architect and property owner here.
Kaylee?
Yes.
Mary Frederickson. The slide that had the schematic with the red circle on it,
Oh, the elevation, yes.
I didn't quite understand what that was indicating. I think you just said that it indicated the high point, but then on the schematic, it looked like the building continued up from there.
No,
So maybe
it's-
I'm just not understanding.
Yes, so for residential, we measure from natural grade. So as you can see, Tom Terry marked the natural grade. And then all the way up, we omit the little weather vane from the overall height. That can be omitted, same with chimneys. But it's just to that top point from natural grade, and that is the highest point of the structure. Another way you can think about it, like when we talk about it, it's like taking slices of a cake. So at any one section, if you take a slice, and from the natural grade to the top roof point, If it's over 35 feet, that's what we're looking at.
So the height from the natural grade up to the red circle is what?
Oh, the red circle is just, I apologize. The red circle is just to circle the measurement that was noted on the elevation. I thought I was helping, but no, it goes all the way, from down here, then all the way up to that point.
Thank you, I was misunderstanding then.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mark.
Mark Hookness. Tammy, do we have any responses from the public, pro or con?
Yes, we do. I did forward the email to you. I had one in opposition, one, in support, and one was kind of, I wouldn't say neutral, but basically I had forwarded these. The third one was saying, if they need this variance because of the topography, I'm okay with it, but because of if it's just a design preference, then they're opposed to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and yeah, we do have, I believe, one of the neighboring property owners here to speak as well.
Kaylee?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in, Mark, we good? Mary Frederickson, you did mention precedent and the fact that more difficult lots will likely be coming on. My understanding, though, is that our individual decisions to individual issues that come before us do not create precedent, and we consider each application that comes to us separately, whether or not there's been
Yes.
precedent or not.
Yes, you should. It's just kind of more forecasting, right? We might see more of these, like just driving around the ranch, really anywhere again in the southwestern area of Prescott too. Like the lots remaining you see, there's a lot of times a reason why. They're just more difficult.
So I agree. I think issues will come before us more so as time goes by, but we should not consider our decision here based on the fact that we either fear or like the idea of setting a precedent for future applications.
No.
It is separate. Okay, thank you.
And Mary, if I may, I agree with your comment completely. One of the other things that I think we need to recognize, and I have this situation in my community, some lots that people own, they're just not going to be able to build on.
Mr. Chairman, Tom Davis. Kaylee, a lot of these that come before us are not the result, well, yeah, a lot of them are a result of the fire code with regards to slope of driveway. And I don't see that in the staff report, but is this a factor on this particular aspect?
I can actually have the project architect come up and address that. I know it obviously factored into the placement of the home on the lot because the slope has to be less steep, per the new requirements, but I don't know if it affected the height overall.
Tom Terry, Distinctive Homes, the architect of this house. The previous submittal, this driveway was steeper, and at that time it affected it. We tried to improve the situation on this. The neighboring homeowner invited me over to his house, and we tried to work through the differences, and we reduced the driveway and lengthened the driveway on this submittal, so it's less than 18%. So it's now, we got it down to maybe 5% by lengthening it and rearranging some grades. So that's where the grade is now.
So to put it simply, the design of and site plan and development of the house is affected by the slope of the driveway.
It was on the first submittal.
Right.
We tried to massage things to improve it, so we are less than 18% minimum for the fire presently on this application.
If I can, a follow-up question. Did the massaging that you guys did, or that you did, include moving the site of the house on the lot itself?
We just rearranged the grades, the grading. The house is remained in the same place all the way up as much as possible. We couldn't get any closer we just couldn't make it work any closer. So we're as high as possible, and we just changed the grading and the finished floor to work out the better situation with the driveway.
I actually have another question, and I don't know, the architect may be a better resource, or you, Kaylee. I couldn't quite figure it from the topography map that you included. Is there, from the home where the issue is coming from, that is, you're blocking my view, and the house as it is currently thinking about being built, do we know what the difference is between the elevation at one versus the other?
Mr. Smith, who's present here, he invited me over at the last meeting, and I was able to project the effects of the house with his view. And the ridge of the house looks like he'll be able, from his great room, he'll be able to overlook our ridge. It was just the two turrets that would be obstructing his, I wouldn't say his main view is towards the San Francisco peaks, which is unimpeded, no problem there. It's just that his view to the north and west, just the turrets were blocking a portion of the view, but there was not a main view out there. It was just views of other houses and so forth. So,
And actually, if my eyes are working here, they're still pretty good. That reads 6310, like on the outer edge of his house, and 6330. So there's like a 20-foot drop here between the northern portion of the neighbor's house and their southern property line, if you will. But you can see the labels are on there. They just get a little smushed. But about, 20 feet over this area, right there.
Thank you. I drove up there yesterday
Thank you.
and saw the windows of the great room of the house above, but I couldn't quite envision how high up the imagined property.
the elevation shows that it's about 15 feet lower if you pull up one of the elevations, drawn elevations, the side views. So
50, 50?
about 15 feet below,
15.
plus or minus, yeah.
So this would be where the driveway comes in. There's the southern neighboring property. Those are the windows that have the view out to the northwest.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, while the architect is here, I've got another question. I'm struggling to understand why this variance is required at all. What structural or design, other than a personal desire, require this to be above the height limitations?
Well, we have architectural committees, and the architectural committee weighed in on this design. We originally had a one-story house, but the committee wanted the lower level, so we have to satisfy the architectural committee on the lower level. And also, the house, it's 15 feet below the street level, so all you really see of the house is the roof design, and they wanted us to improve the roof designs. Therefore, we have the cupolas there, and the neighbor has a cupola too on his house. And the cupolas are to allow light in the center of the house and to improve the design upon the request of the committee, which has been approved. This design has been approved by the committee.
Yeah, and just point of record, the committee is the homeowners association.
That's correct.
Not the city.
Right, but we have to go through architecture. We have to satisfy the architecture committee, and we have to satisfy the city of Prescott. So that's another organization that we have to get approval from.
Okay, so again, as far as having that extra height, there definitely are alternatives from a design standpoint.
Yes, but the reasons why they're there, I relayed to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So the addition of the cupola was at the request of the HOA Architectural Committee?
That's what I remember, because the roof of the house was all you would see from the street, and they wanted an attractive design. So the cupola was suggested by the committee and us and the homeowner. We all wanted that, and it was approved by the committee. So
Did the committee indicate that they would disapprove the plan if there was a more plain-looking roof line?
well, we haven't gone there yet because we haven't made a decision here. So that's the next version after this meeting. So depending on how it goes.
Thank you.
All right.
Rick Kimmery here. Got a question for you.
Yes.
So the only function for these cupolas or turrets is for lights. Can that be handled with skylights?
Lights and aesthetics by request of the committee and the owner. But yes, that's right. We could do skylights too. So
Okay, that's all I asked. Thanks.
okay.
Do we have public comment?
Yes, we do. First speaker would be Jim Smith.
That's right. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Jim Smith. I own and have owned for 15 years the house immediately above this. And as I put in my written response, what the application does not show that building this house with or without cupolas result, and Mr. Terry was kind enough to come to my house, and he will, I'm sure, agree that the roof line of this house will be above my great room. I call it the living room. It's been referred to as the great room. So it will be above that. So that is the reason that I object to that. I don't object to a house being built on this lot. There's no reason for me to object to it. But I'll also point out that Mr. Terry also designed immediately across the street a house that was with normal height, that doesn't interfere with anybody's view, that would work on this. It has to do with the design of this house with cupolas and siding it in front of right in front of my house. See, none of the things that have been presented to you show that the siding of it, if you put it, it's put right in front of my house. And there are many, I would estimate 100 sloping level lots and houses built in the ranch where this doesn't happen, where a lower level house gets built to block the view of the upper level house. And I want to also important, it's implied to you by Mr. Terry that this has been approved by the Homeowners Association. The answer is yes, but for a different lot. This house was designed and approved by the Homeowners Association for a different lot, not for this lot and not to block my view. So I ask that you deny this application. If for any reason you felt that there needs to be some approval, just that the roof line be below my living room or great room floor level. I mean, I will look out. This house will totally block my lower level of my house. It would not be able to see anything but the house. But I'm talking about the great room. So I ask that you deny this.
Mr. Chair. Sir, first off, thank you for participating in the process. And I also appreciate the fact that you point out that there are lots of alternatives to stay within the code that the city has established. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of me? Thank you.
Thank you. For the architect, is that true that it was approved for a different lot?
This project's been a project in 5 years in making. It was previously planned for the lot northeast of it, and the homeowner bought the two other adjacent lots. Yes, right there. It was originally drawn there, and then it was moved up to where we are now, and the committee had approved. So it was approved on both locations, and it was previously approved on this lot but it has expired because it's been so long on the variance meeting. So whatever we get approved here, we have to go back to the committee and get it reapproved.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's not a good one.
Who's next?
Next speaker is Jeannie McHenry.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jeannie McHenry, and I'm the owner of this property on Cloud Crossing. I also own 2 other lots on Golden Oak Circle, so that makes this property of mine an L-shaped property. Originally, the home was designed to straddle Lot 859 and 858, or 850, sorry, 859, 850. That's the 1 acre parcel all the way down the hill. So originally it was straddling the property, sitting right in front of Mr. Smith's home. The HOA requested 3 things that we do to our home plans. The first thing they requested was to push the house up higher towards the street, towards Cloud Crossing, to move it out of the way of Mr. Smith's northerly view. So what Tom did is he pushed the structure as close to Cloud Crossing on the building envelope that he could. That shortened the driveway for us. That was a good thing. And the changes he made today actually gives us only a 5% grade for our driveway, where that's almost flat. So we're very happy about that. The second request that the HOA made to us was to add a lower level, because originally the home was a ranch style home, and we didn't meet the square footage required for that section in the ranch. So we needed to add some square footage, and they wanted us to put a complete lower level, and we didn't want that much space. So we compromised and we put in a 1-room lower level underneath the great room. So if you look at the color picture of the house, if we have a color picture, yeah, okay, most of it is a ranch, especially from the front. You can't even tell there's a lower level from the street. So the only lower level that we added was under the great room. And because the property slopes so steep, it was suggested that we, by the architect, that we add fill. We have to do some fill when we build this house. So the third request by the HOA was to add natural light or windows in the kitchen. The kitchen of this house sits in the middle of the home. So the only way we could add the natural light was to go up and put the turret in. They also wanted the roof to look more delightful, nicer, not just plain roof. Because the property slopes so steep, all you see is roof. So we added that design of the turret, which gave us the natural light that they requested in the kitchen, and it gave the roof some design that was more aesthetically pleasing. So, lanterns, those are called lanterns, and I can't forget the term you used. But those are very common in the ranch. You see them all over the place. Mr. Smith has a turret because his kitchen sits in the middle of his home as well. And that's how he adds light into his kitchen. So we thought that adding that lantern was made the design a lot nicer. So Tom did get the opportunity to go to Jim's home and kind of point out where the structure would end in relation to his view. And he has a northerly view. He wrote a letter and he stated, "I have no views to the south, to the west, or to the east. He only has a view to the north. And since we pushed the house up as close to the street as we could, we moved it completely out of the way of his living room windows." So when Tom went to his home and looked out that living room window, his northerly view was completely clear. Now, when you turn your head to the left, he's going to see my house. But when you turn your head to the left, that's west. And he clearly stated in his letter that he has no view to the west. So that's my argument against blocking his view. And if Tom would show you on the site plan exactly where the structure will be situated, you can see Mr. Smith's house right there, and you would be able to see that his view is off to the right, north. And yes, when he looks out his window and turns his head to the left, to the west, he will see my house. I'm right next door. And also in his letter, he stated that my lot at 691 Cloud Crossing is much lower than his home at 699 Cloud Crossing. So that makes me think and conclude we're not blocking any of his view. So in conclusion, the house that we are building is mostly a single-story ranch-style home, with the exception of a lower level underneath the great room. The location of the house on the site plan proves that there is no interference of Jim Smith's northerly view. And the changes that Tom made today, again, greatly improve the slope of our driveway, pert near flat. So I ask you kindly to approve this variance.
Thank you.
Last speaker would be Mr. Tom Terry, if he has anything else to add.
Thank you so much for considering this variance, and I think we hashed through any questions, so we look forward to your decision.
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, Tom Davis. The bottom line with regards to the height, if the cupola is removed, does it comply with the zoning orders? I mean, with the height?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
It's very close, so yes.
Miriam Habrick, I have a question. Does the HOA have the legitimate power to tell a homeowner what happens to the interior of their house? I know they have to approve the exterior, but the light coming in is an interior issue.
Yes, but it's reflected on the exterior, and they can ask for things like cupolas and so forth. So to break up the exterior appearance, and they do have rule over the exterior appearance of homes in neighborhoods.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, let me just tag on because I'm ignorant about architecture. The cupola as is designed right now looks tall to me. Is there an alternative structure that you could put on the roof line that would allow for some interior light and not project as high above the roof line? So it would give some aesthetic variance to the roof line looked at from the street and would allow for light to get in, but wouldn't be the height structure that we see right now.
There are always options. This was the options selected. We try to make it as short as possible. We just have 2-foot high windows in there. So it's just basically at the ridge of the peak there, it comes up, a little bit for flashing, and then 2 feet, and then the roof. And the roof is a dictated slope by the ranch at a 412. So we had a 2-foot window and a 412 roof, which was dictated. So it's as short as it can be with this idea, but we can always do something different, but it won't be as attractive, is what the point of what the committee wanted, something attractive.
So it sounds like from an aesthetic standpoint, it's either cupola or no cupola. And from the light perspective, it's available through the cupola or would be available through skylights.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I've just a comment question kind of combined. As I look at this, the view issue, whether it blocks the view or doesn't block the view, he said, she said, what we're really looking at is the code of the height. We're not talking about blocking views, we're talking about the height. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the house could be moved to a different location or lowered, and you could meet the requirements of the code. Is that correct?
Lowering it, we improved the driveway, but we can lower it, but we can't lower it too much because we have to meet the fire department 18%. But yes, it could be
You got a long
lowered.
ways to go from 5% to 18%.
I'm just saying there's a window that I have to stay within, and yes, it could be lowered.
Just like you have to stay within all the code requirements as you build the house.
Right.
So one could lower the house, move it at a different location, and have the same cupola on it and meet the height requirements.
Well, on your point of moving the location, we don't want to go down the hill because that's increasing our slope of the driveway and getting him more into his views if we go down the hill. So I would say we could lower it, but I don't think we can move it to improve the situation. So,
But there are definitely alternatives that can be used to meet the city's code.
there's usually always alternatives. It's yet to be seen to meet city code. We can reduce it and improve it, but will we meet it? We have to go through that to find out. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Mr. Chair, if you'll entertain a motion.
Okay.
I move that the variance request VA 25-002 be denied as there are significant alternatives to meet the city's code.
Do I have a second?
Rick Kimmery seconds.
Any comments? Okay. All in favor of the motion to deny, say aye.
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 Those approved? Okay. It's been denied. Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is CUP 24004.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Tammy DeWitt, Community Planner. The request before you is review for revocation of the conditional use permit to allow the inclusion of a helicopter landing pad at the north side of the hospital site adjacent to State Route 69. So on November 14th, 2020, on November 21st, 2024, a conditional use permit was approved to allow the helicopter landing pad for use as a helistop with 3 conditions. The 3 conditions that were approved by the board was 1, screening 6-foot masonry wall to be placed on the north and west property line, which is where the adjacent residential properties are. Additional landscaping beyond approved landscaping along frontage State Route 69 adjacent to the helipad and per the rendering provided by the applicant at the meeting. And number 3, the above conditions are to be completed prior to the final of the building permit for the helipad and initiation of use. Since the meeting, they have applied for a building permit. It is out for corrections. It was missing the masonry wall in the permit. So we were including the masonry wall, the landscaping, and the helipad all on one permit to make it easier for staff. That was all approved at once. And since then, the helipad has been used. I was getting emails about once a week or twice a week from neighbors out there that the helipad was being used. So since that was a violation of the conditional use permit, we notified the applicant that we were going to bring it before the Board of Adjustment for consideration or to amend the conditions of the permit. So this is the site. It is along State Route 69, adjacent to Diamond Valley subdivision, which is in the county. So this is like the most edge towards Prescott Valley of the city of Prescott boundary. It is business regional, which does allow for a hospital. And here's some imagery of the site as it was being under construction. And then the helipad site was right in this area. This is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant at the November Board of Adjustment meeting that showed what they were to do the additional landscaping here along 69 beyond what was approved. And then they're also going to seed this area because it's all dirt, so that, when the helicopter lands, less dirt flying into the highway, which was our concern. They also were going to do a 6-foot block wall, which was approved by the board, along this boundary. Since then, they got some bids for, it is 1,250 linear feet along that border. So to do a 6-foot CMU wall along that whole border, they said that is costing about $165,000 for material and installation. So an option that they brought before us to bring before you was either to do a 6-foot wood fence, which would meet the screening requirement, or to do wood fence along this area here, and then a CMU wall around that area. So there's 2 options they brought before you, either a 6-foot wood wall fence around that edge, or a mix of both the fence and a CMU wall. So this is looking from Robin Drive, the one wood fence, or there's this portion along here that would go. And then we have the water tank here. So if they put the mixture of wood and CMU, the wood would end probably about around in here, and then the rest along would be a CMU wall. This is the helipad. It is constructed, has a fence, it has the lighting and such. And like we said, it has been used. And then this is looking on the east property line where a CMU block wall is being proposed, or a wood fence. And then this is from the highway. They have not done the additional landscaping at this time, waiting for approval of their permit. We did reach out to all the property owners within 1,000 feet, which is what we did with the original conditional use permit, because we know that the helicopter impacts a greater population further out. It was also posted the property and published in the local paper to meet statutory requirements. So before you is a proposal either to amend or revoke the conditional use permit. And those are the three conditions that were approved that we can, the one they're asking for is about the screening fence to the north and west, whether it to be a masonry wall, a wood fence, or a mixture of the two. And the representative is here of the property to answer any other questions that I can't.
Mr. Chair, a question for staff? Tammy, from a procedural standpoint, the conditional use permit is approved. It hasn't, the requirements haven't been implemented yet. Is the issue that the helicopter is being used ahead of the three requirements being met?
Yes.
So as a board, we can revoke the conditional use permit, do nothing, leave it alone, and let the city enforce any violations, or we can modify the conditional use permit.
With the conditional use permit in process, they have approval for a helipad and to continue with the permitting process. So the only way we can take it to enforcement actions for the use is you have to revoke the conditional use permit. Then we can take it to the hearing officer for a disallowed use.
So from a pure, unemotional, vanilla view of the world here, they haven't violated anything based on our November meeting. These are the three things you need to do. Those three things are in process. There's been a suggestion by them for lower cost to put wood up. But again, from a board standpoint, we don't care if they've got a cost impact. That's their problem, not the board's problem. So we left everything alone. They've got to put the concrete walls up, the 1,200 feet. And I believe as a board, we did that to help the local community, and very prudent. And then the landscaping is awaiting agreement with the city, and then they'll plant the trees and do their thing. And then we meet the intent of the November 21st meeting.
So they're in violation of the conditional use permit because they've been using the helipad before that everything's been completed. So they are currently in violation of their conditional use permit. That's why we brought it before you. They've been using it prior to it being permitted or even the building permit being issued. So
how would, if let's just say we did nothing as a board, how would the city enforce the fact that they're violating the conditional use permit?
Well, we're before you to ask you for, your recommendation from an enforcement, I can defer to our attorney too, that with the conditional use permit in effect, correct me if I'm wrong, that with the conditional use permit still valid, they have a right to have the helipad, the helistop. But they are in violation of, that's why we're bringing it before you. So in order for us to take enforcement action to the hearing officer, the CUP has to be revoked.
Okay. Legal comments?
Yeah, there are two kind of separate lines working here at the same time. One is the conditional use permit process through the code, and the other is enforcement for violation of the conditional use permit. So I think as you kind of rightly stated, you've got sort of three options. One, you can revoke entirely and be done with it, and then they have appeal rights to that. The second one is you can consider some of their alternate proposals and adopt those. And if you feel necessary, maybe put some time limits on those. And the third, as you say, is to do nothing. I'm not sure I agree entirely with Tammy if we don't have enforcement action, even though there is a CUP, because it's a violation of the CUP. So it's something we haven't necessarily explored. Violations of the code are civil, and we have a hearing officer process to consider violations of the code. So it's kind of a gray area. And, I think that's why we thought the first option would be to bring it back to you to see if you're interested in revoking the conditional use permit to begin with. And/or if you're willing to consider some of the alternative options that they're proposing. Your third option, like you laid out, is to do nothing and let the city enforce. And then we're going to have to figure that enforcement mechanism out. And I don't know what the hearing officer will do with it if there's an existing conditional use permit. But there are violations to the use permit, right? So here we are. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
That did help, and
yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mary Frederickson, considering our conditions, the board's conditions that we put on back in November, the third condition is clearly not being followed, as it specifies that these conditions 1 and 2 are to be completed prior to the use of the helipad. That's the end of it as far as I'm concerned. Revocation seems to me to be the appropriate step to take. What happens next will be frankly up to the applicant as to whether or not they want to put in another application for a use permit, conditional, special, whichever way they feel appropriate to bring before the city. And then it'll be on the city to figure out what to do if they continue to violate the permitting process by continuing to bring a helicopter in. I don't know the answer to that as far as the enforcement angle goes. But what's before the board is revocation or not. And it seems clearly up for revocation considering that the applicant has not satisfied either 1 or 2 and has violated number 3.
And Mr. Chair, Mary, thank you for that. One of my thoughts, though, is we could put barricades out on the helipad and put yellow tape on it and an FAA X, which means don't use. And they have an emergency and need to get, a life-saving event. A helicopter will land in the parking lot, land in the street to accomplish the life-saving mission. So I think we need to keep that in mind. That I'm not sure the city or the board can block the use of a helicopter if it's an emergency situation. There's a traffic accident right there. I mean, they're going to bring in a life flight helicopter and do what needs to be done. I'm very interested in hearing from the hospital why they aren't proceeding at best speed to be as cooperative as possible with the neighbor and with the city. Do we have the hospital staff here?
There is a representative here of the property.
Mark, if I can just add on, that I see a distinction between landing a helicopter in an unforeseen emergency situation and landing helicopters as a part of your standard business model.
Fair.
Who do we have first?
Do we want the applicant to come up maybe first?
Great, and I would ask the applicant to answer. I know there was a question in the November hearing whether or not your expectation was 1 helicopter a day versus, which was in your documentation, versus at the meeting it was maybe 1 helicopter a week. So since you've been in operation for, I don't know how long now, maybe you can clarify historically how many helicopters have flown into that helipad between the time you started and today.
Good morning. My name is Robert Donaldson. I am the architect for BMH As-Built, which is Exceptional Healthcare's architect. I'm here with Mr. Bob Cardenas. He is CEO of the Arizona Exceptional Healthcare Properties. He'll be able to help you with the day-to-day operations of any helicopter emergency use. And as far as the timeline, yes, we are still working through meeting all the requirements for the building permit and those conditions to satisfy and be a good neighbor. As of right now, we haven't completed those. So that's why we came back with those accommodations. We would still like to use the helipad in those emergency situations while we resolve all the other issues that need to be addressed.
Yes. Good morning. And I may add, to answer your question, ma'am, we opened operations on 5 February, 2 hours, about 3 hours after we received approval from the state of Arizona Department of Health Science Services. So we opened, unwrapped everything, turned on the lights, started seeing patients. Since that day, it took another month, March 15th, we had to do some accommodations with Native Air to relocate a couple of light poles. So we did that. So since the helipad's been approved for use on March 15th, we've had 4 life-saving air medical evacuations.
Since
March 15th, sir.
Okay.
I can't tell you the exact date. I could look it up, but that's the date we were approved once we made those accommodations with Native Air, and their pilots were willing to use our approved helipads.
Just 4 in 4 months?
March, April, May. What, about 3 months, sir? Yeah.
So significantly under your forecast.
Yeah, to your question, yeah, I mean, if it matters or not, after 30 years in the Army, as an Army officer, my career field was medical evacuation and planning for combat operations, and you can't really plan. We don't really want that, but obviously the mitigations and, I drove up today from Phoenix. Prescott is our 4th hospital. We'll open a 5th one by the end of the year in Eloy. And we're just trying to mitigate any risk and create access to care for the citizens of Prescott and everywhere else that we establish hospital.
If I may, and thank
Yes,
you
sir.
thank you for your service. The 4 missions that have come with the helicopter. Do you have any idea what time of day those were?
I could find out, sir. I'm
You
sorry I
know
don't
if
have that
they're-
right now.
We got somebody in the back that might know.
You have to,
Okay, which
that happens.
I would expect middle of the night people tend to get hurt, things like that. Do you know the criticality of any of those patients?
Yeah, the 2 were heart attacks. One was a shortness of breath, and I forgot what the 4th one was.
Okay, so urgent things.
Yes, sir. But when they make the medical decision making, which is the ER emergency room provider, I mean, they don't make that decision lightly.
No, I have personal experiences.
Yes, sir. So it's when they make the call, it's because it's necessary.
Thank you.
And part of that decision making is if you have a pike and accept the patient or not too, and then the travel time to their facility, which is about 15 miles west and about 15, 20 minutes west and about 15 minutes east. And sometimes the patient's condition may or may not support that transport.
Okay, who's first? Thank you.
First member of the public will be Ann Friday.
Good morning. I'm Ann Friday, a resident of Prescott. I'm really disturbed to hear Ms. DeWitt tell you that a hospital is allowed in a business regional, which is true. A hospital with a heliport is not allowed in a business regional, only in industrial. And that's what I'm kind of here about. If I may, I'd like to hand out a 3-page handout. Is that okay?
Ms. Friday, if I could ask, is this the same handout that was included to the city earlier or something new? Thank you.
So the hearing today, as we know, is a decision to revoke or not the conditional use permit for 38 AZ Heliport at 4822 East Highway 69 in Prescott. The approval for this heliport permit was granted in November by a 5-1 vote of this board, but your approval was based on false information provided to you by the City of Prescott. City staff told you that the conditional use permit process was being used because the city did not know there was a proposed helipad when the initial discussions with the applicant started. The 3 pages I just handed you prove that is not correct. If you would look at page 1, this is a copy of the initial pre-application conference site plan, number 21-159, submitted to the city almost 3 years earlier than your approval hearing, on October 14, 2021, showing the heliport is located in the lower left corner of the site plan at the Robin Drive entrance with a 5 encircled. Note 5 clearly states proposed helipad and safety zone. Page 2 is a copy of another site plan created 3 months later on February 7th of 2022, which shows the heliport relocated to its current location at the northeast corner of the hospital. It also, this site plan contains notes 37, 38, 39, and 40 describing the hospital heliport details, which have not yet been met, I might add. If you would please hold page 3 next to page 2, you will see that the site plan you were shown in your November hearing was taken from the site plan created 3 years earlier. However, it was folded in such a way that the heliport notes and the date on page 2 were concealed, and this was doctored by superimposing helipad location site plan, and this is a screenshot I took from the recording of your hearing where the closed caption says proposed helipad to be used. So the city knew almost 3 years earlier of the need or the desire for this heliport. Now, to get it approved by Planning and Zoning and the City Council, we had more site plans created, removing the heliport and showing a blank space where the current location is. And those were approved by Planning and Zoning and City Council and our mayor who's here. And no one mentioned at any time there was a heliport. Where was the heliport? Well, between the Planning and Zoning and the City Council hearings, yet another site plan was created. This one was for the Water Service Advisory Committee. The heliport was removed, and in its place, rough grading pad. And so they were all approved without the heliport or the heliport notes. And then suddenly, the helipad is discovered in August 13, 2024, already built. One of the neighbors reported it to Ms. DeWitt in October, and she said, "Oh, we just found out last Friday." Well, last Friday was October 4th. Clearly, the city knew since August that the helipad had already been built without a permit. And the inspector notes said someone unidentified at the city told them to proceed. Now, I asked the city manager who told them that. He said it wasn't him, but he didn't know. So then a month later, September 13th, the applicant submitted the conditional use permit request with no date on it. I asked Ms. DeWitt, what date was this? She said it was entered into the city record on September 13th. So it still has no date. But you were seriously misled by the city, and your approval was based on incorrect information. And these residents are here today and have written you and have appeared at the original hearing. They're very anxious over this aircraft operation, which needed, number one, a rezoning for that business regional parcel to make it industrial. And number two, a special use permit, not a conditional use permit, to allow for the heliport operation. And I suggest that you revoke it today and allow the applicant to go through the city and request the rezoning and the special use permit so people have an opportunity to provide the public input that the land code process allows. And I might add, the FAA has written a letter that says they cannot control the heliport environment. It's up to local zoning ordinances. So by bypassing the local zoning ordinances and the general plan, by the way, to get this as a conditional use permit to this board for approval is not helping the residents or the FAA meet its goals for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Springer.
Good morning. My name is Larry Springer. I'm a resident of Prescott.
Larry, just a second. I'm going to step away for a minute and. Thomas.
Step away. As vice chair, I'll take over. That's all.
Oh.
No big deal.
Well, I'm here to comment on the public safety issues created by the 38AZ heliport at 4822 East Highway due to a lack of compliance with some of the FAA recommendations and conditions imposed upon the heliport owner and the zoning violations of the Prescott Land Development Code. The heliport is situated on a parcel zone business regional surrounded by single-family residence zoning. Aircraft operations are not permitted in BR zoning. Aircraft operations, including those of a hospital heliport, have two code requirements, an industrial zoning and a special use permit. In March of this year, FAA officials have acknowledged that they aren't doing enough to ensure air safety. Exhibit A of your agenda packet contains the FAA letter that on page 3 states that the FAA relies on local zoning ordinances to protect the heliport environment. The residents living in close proximity to 38AZ heliport live in a state of anxiety of fearing an aviation accident happening in their neighborhood. They shouldn't have to bear that burden, especially since the Land Development Code process has not been followed, but rather a less rigorous review without adequate public input. Specific compliance deficiencies include the fact that the heliport does not have a wind direction indicator lighted for night operations, nor a recommended heliport identification beacon, which is required for night operations. There's an error on my part, overtaken by a new development. The enclosure that you had in your agenda packet stating that the heliport does not have a wind direction device. Much to my surprise, one has suddenly appeared, and they now have a windsock on the roof of the heliport, or the hospital itself, as of yesterday morning. And at dark 30 this morning, I drove by to make sure that that new windsock was not lighted. It is not. So I'm in error reporting no wind direction indicator, but I'm correct in reporting that it is not lighted, which is a requirement for night operations. In addition, the heliport does not have the standard H marking, which is more than just a visual aid for incoming helicopter pilots. It's also oriented to show the desired direction of approach to the landing site. So that the absence of that and additional data that is also painted on the landing zone site itself is a further deficiency. The fence around the landing zone itself is supposed to be 5 feet. To me, it looks like 4. I'm not in a position to go ahead as a private citizen and go with a tape measure and start conducting some kind of forensic examination of the fence, but I throw that out as a possibility. To fix this whole situation, the combination of code issues, the masonry, the walls, and the sort of things that are on the screen in front of you, and to put some pressure on to complete or come up to FAA standards with these various safety issues, it seems to me the proper code, the proper course of action is to revoke the conditional use permit and give the applicant an opportunity to go back to square one and request a land development rezoning of the area to industrial and go through the process for the special use permit. And that will do a couple of things. Number one, it will follow the city procedures that should have been followed if they had known about the heliport early on, instead of this workaround to just kind of make it happen. Secondly, it will allow more citizen input. And third, although I'm not a lawyer, it seems to me if there was a helicopter accident at that site and people started asking questions, one of the questions that might be asked early on is, what were the procedures to approve this heliport in the first place? And if somebody finds out that, well, we truncated the procedures, and instead of doing what we should have done when we discovered that it had already been built, instead of issuing a stop work order and doing something else, we kind of did this workaround to make it happen. And I don't think that reflects well on the city. I don't think it would reflect well on the jury. And I think at this point in time, maybe it's time to just go back, start over, rethink, and follow the rules. Thank you.
Pamela Boyer.
Good morning. I'm Pamela Boyer, and I live on Robin Drive at the top of the hill. So I hear the helicopter at night, and as it starts, all the dogs and coyotes start howling. So it's a very awful sound. I've lived there since 1984, and I was looking at my property value from this county, and my property has dropped $55,000. That's a lot, because I've waited a long time for my property value to go up. I don't have anything against the hospital. I think it's a very good one. I had to use it recently. But I do think this is a danger to our community in Diamond Valley. You talk about views from the previous person. A lot of views have been destroyed. I don't have any animals in my yard. I used to have deer, javelina, which I liked. None of them are there anymore. In fact, a whole herd was down in my neighbor's property, and they were terrified, and they left, and we've not seen them since. And ladies and gentlemen, you saw that these people are not following your recommendation actions. So what makes you think it's going to be a safe place for all of us to live there? You talk about accidents. It could crash, with all the accidents in the air these days, it could crash into any of us there in that area, even in Yavapai Hills. You know, I know Diamond Valley isn't in the city. I worked for the city for 12 years. I know all about that property, and I'm glad the hospital is there, but I do not approve of this helicopter, and I'm asking you all to revoke the CUP 24-004. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mike Shoemaker.
Hi there. I'm just making a statement. I'm in support of the hospital and the helipad. I've lived in Diamond Valley since 1986. This opposition, we're moving forward. This is better for the whole community. We have another hospital up here. And would these same people that are opposed to this helipad be opposed to helicopters flying in to fight a wildfire right now? So just remember, the needs of the many outweigh the wants of the few. Thank you.
Next speaker, Gil Ingraham.
I'm Gil Ingraham. I'm part of a generation that when the whop, 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 when the whop, whop, whop hit, it was a sign of hope. You understand what the whop, whop, whop is? It's what a helicopter makes when it's doing its job. I look at this whole situation as an asset rather than a liability. One lady talked about her property, values. Would it be nice closer to the hospital? I don't know. Maybe it'll increase her value. They need to clean up the neighborhood. And I've been through that area, and it could use some help. Additionally, I think the city, county needs to get after Dignity Health and upgrade their trauma issue or their trauma capability from a 4 to a 1, and maybe you won't need the helicopter. It is what it is. I believe that value of life, for one, supersedes the many. And in this case, it's just a bunch of nitpicking. Thank you.
Kathy O'Boyle.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. Appreciate it. I came with one question and then had comments afterwards. My initial question is, of all the helicopter patients who were helicoptered into the facility, were airlifted out because they were unable to complete the care there?
Yes.
Sorry.
All of the patients who were brought in, all of the the helicopter flights in and out, how many of those patients had to be airlifted to another facility for further care?
Okay.
So the 4 patients that were medevaced resulted from their treatment of care started at the hospital.
Yeah.
And then based on their conditions, ages, everything. The medical decision was to air evac them out for the interest of the
But they weren't
patient
air
safety.
evacted in there first.
No, sir. No, they were not air
I think
evac.
that's what you were asking.
I was asking for all the patients that were brought in by helicopter for treatment.
0 were brought in by helicopter.
Okay, thank you.
Were removed, okay. My other question is that listening to the first order of business that you held, you rejected the plan because there are options that would obstruct somebody's view. Well, in Diamond Valley, and I want you to think if you held or lived in one of these houses, they're building a 6-foot cement wall or a wood wall right in front of your house. How would you feel about that if you lived there? How is that going to affect when we have the monsoon season? I never thought of the drainage issues. But when they were building this facility, my house flooded because of all the blasting, and it did alter the drainage on my property. And nobody was willing to pay for it, and it cost me a lot of money to fix it. Anyway, I do agree that the hospital is fantastic. I am not convinced that the helicopter, as it is currently in service, does not meet the regulations because of the zoning issues. And you know, you have to look and balance what the two is. Personally, I'm not for the helicopter, I am for the hospital. Not for the helicopter as it is now. That doesn't mean that in the future, when things are done correctly, zoned correctly, it would be a different issue. But the way it is now, the law that you have said, well, I guess you couldn't use the word law, but the requirements that you put down have been violated. The people living there haven't violated it. The hospital has. So are you going to hold the people ransom who follow the law to somebody who doesn't follow the law? And what happens if this situation arises in another situation? You know, you said that you're setting, you know, boundaries. I guess that's my only statements. Thank you.
Last speaker is Karen Thiel.
Hi, my name is Karen Thiel, and I'm a property owner in Yavapai Hills on Dragonfly Drive. One thing that I noticed about everyone that's talking about this now, no one is talking about the Arizona Department of Health Services, and nobody is talking about the FAA regulations for heliports. Since I got the letter from the City of Prescott Planning and Zoning Board, I went through 150 pages of heliport development, and I don't see that this company has done much about what is recommended for them. And the other thing is, does anyone here know the trauma levels of the hospitals that are in Prescott and Prescott Valley? They are a level 4, which is the lowest. There is no level 1, there is no level 2 or level 3. You must be taken out of the Prescott area to get a level 1. Level 4 is what Yavapai Regional and the West Campus and the East Campus, which is Prescott Valley. Okay, so those things included, a good EMT could do what exceptional health care does. A good EMT provides trauma care. Exceptional health care says they provide trauma care, but they do not provide a level of trauma. So I would say that in seeing that none of the FAA rules that I've found seem to be followed by this company applying for a permit to have their helicopter there. And there is a permit in Prescott, the YRMC, and also in YRMC East. My first thought is, if you have a heart attack, where would you go? You would call 911. An EMT would come. An EMT could stabilize you. An EMT could offer trauma life support, transfer patients to a higher level of center, and they have 24-hour emergency for the most part. So why would we need another non-certified level, something that's not even certified for a level 4 part of care, intervene in the time that it takes to get someone experiencing a heart attack or something traumatic, to get them down to the valley? The closest one would be the 27th Avenue Honor Health. And that's basically what I have to say about that. I live in close proximity to where this helipad is. While we lived at another piece of property that was even closer than where we live now, we had a lot of helicopters flying over, probably from Love Field or something like that at the time. It broke windows in my house, and it also broke a concrete bird bath. Now, if it's powerful enough to do that, what is constant helicopter of some place that's not even following the FAA regulations that are submitted for stuff like this? And if you look at, the other thing you have to think about is the FAA regulations only pertain to like sea level. And at 5,000 feet, there's a lot of difference in what kind of safety zone you have to have for a helicopter to take off. The other thing you want to think about is all the Firewise stuff that they've been doing in the area and right in this area. How can they compete with 100 to 300 gallons of jet fuel if the helicopter happens to crash into one of those? And finally, you've talked to zoning laws. They said that you should look at the zoning in the area of a heliport or a helipad that would look into the future and see what areas might be developed in the area. Well, considering Prescott and how it's gone, they could probably put an 8-story structure right in the adjoining property, which is right off of Robin Drive on the other side. So how does that fit into creating a safe heliport in this area? I don't think it does. Thank you.
That was all.
Mr. Chair, if I can just make a few comments, sir.
First, please. I was on the list to speak, but I didn't hear my name called.
Did you fill out a speaker card, sir?
They told me to keep it with me.
Oh, no, sir. You can hand it to Mr. Lund, and then you can make your comments, sir.
Thank you. Is my name on that list?
No, because I have to get this.
Oh, sorry. Would you like to speak?
Mr. Craig Neese.
You first.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that you guys have a second chance to review this decision today. I'm Craig Neese. I live on Donna Drive, directly above the open pit for the hospital that we have there. We were kind of surprised when we watched your, I wanted to be here on your November meeting to grant this request for this helipad use. I couldn't, unfortunately, due to other issues, but as I watched it on TV, I was amazed at how the concerns of people that have lived in this community for 20, 30, 40 years were just brushed aside. Major concerns, the same things that you're hearing today. Concerns about even putting it on Highway 69 to begin with, when at the same time that they're going to abandon the Sundog project, meaning that 69 has to be expanded at some point and not too long. And where does that mean it's going to be expanded? The helipad is right next to the highway. So we're going to look at continual growth with that. I had the exciting adventure the other night of having one land in the middle of the night Do any of you know what the flight path is for this? Am I allowed to ask questions first off, or do I just make comments? Am I allowed to ask questions of the board? I don't know the rule.
No, we may not have the answers, but you're welcome to
Okay.
question.
Do any of you know what the flight path is for a helicopter landing on that pad? Is there a specific flight path?
Please address us, sir.
Okay, well, he knows the flight path. Do you? Do any of you know the flight path? Do you expect it to come up 69 with traffic and drop down next to the hospital? This pad that you have allowed is at the bottom of an open pit, the very bottom, at the bottom of a canyon that only has a few hundred feet more to go to be the very, very bottom of that canyon. Both sides coming in on it. The only way for a helicopter to get into that, and the only one that I have seen land, has circled around to come down into that. I have a recording of that if you would like to hear it over my house. You've heard of destruction to property from helicopters flying too close. We've lived in this neighborhood through nothing but nonsense with this development. We've heard of homes being damaged from blasting. My own home was damaged. It took me almost a year to get this corporation or the people that worked for them to help us with our damage. These people have promised to do things. They don't do them. They promised to do all of these things. They didn't do any of them. And although one of you told us this was a nothing burger, that this, because you had driven past a hospital with a helipad and it didn't seem like a big whoop, it's a big whoop. And it's a dangerous whoop. And it's a big problem for the neighborhood. Putting that tank there alone, a water tank for one building in a community with water problems, that water tank serves nobody in Prescott but one building. That facility, as good as the hospital it is, as good as the people are, it is an eyesore. Number 3, the above conditions are to be completed prior to the final building permit. The final building permit, the thing was built before you guys even met on this action. It was there. We brought it to the attention of Mr. Witt. Many of us were told downtown, we don't know it was going in. What is this? What kind of a neighbor are you to do this to people? You've got a number of homes that are in the Prescott city limits. We heard people complaining to you. You just went through a long meeting about views. You just destroyed the views of all the homes registered in Prescott with that water tank. You've talked about making them do a 6-foot wall. Can anybody tell me what the purpose of that 6-foot wall is? Anybody? You don't have to answer. If it's noise abatement, the chain link fence that is currently in that place doesn't even block the view of the hospital from the homes around it. And a multi-million-dollar company, I assume, receiving federal money for some of this project, should have enough money to put up a damn fence that's 6 feet tall. And you guys are considering. And this organization comes back to you and says, we'd like to do a wooden fence. Are there any other cuts in Prescott, any other cliff sides that you have allowed, whether it's up at the ranch, anywhere else, any other business is allowed to do this and put up a wooden fence? They're trying to cheap out even on this much of this. This was a bad decision. This is a bad thing to put in the neighborhood. There's no need for it. I urge this board to revoke this and never grant it again. This is not necessary for our community. Thank you.
Okay, now it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning still. Mr. Chair and Board of Adjustment members. My name is Chelsea Walton. I'm the Community Development Director. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about process. We heard from citizens today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. It's important that we all have a voice in this process, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your morning to do that with us. So relative to why this came before the board as a conditional use permit and not a rezone application, and as several of the members had mentioned, previous to this project, in prior considerations for hospital developments, this is viewed as more of an ambulance service. So similar to an ambulance visiting a site to take a patient away or bring a patient in, that's what this is viewed as. It is not a heliport. The helicopters are not staying, fueling, being serviced in any way. As you'll see at the Dignity Health West campus, they have a heliport there, and a helicopter is typically stationed there. This is not that, so the rezone application was not required. We would likely not support a rezone just because that would be spot zoning. There is no other industrial type zoning in the area. So again, this was a conditional use permit for that ambulance service, and that's what is before the board today. So there was some comment about site plans going back and forth, and it is true, when it came in for a pre-application, there was a small helipad in a different location noted. Pre-application submittals are not official. Projects often change before they're officially submitted. When the first official submittal came in, there was no helipad or helistop proposed, so staff did not provide any kind of comment relative to that and did not propose a conditional use permit process because no helipad/helistop was proposed. When staff did discover it, we immediately brought it to you. So my staff, being the Planning and Zoning Department, when it came to our attention from other processes and site plans on other permit applications, when we found out about it, we brought it up to the applicants. You need to go through the conditional use permit process. And the conditional use was put on the permit for the helipad, not the building itself. So yes, the hospital was granted a certificate of occupancy, knowing that the building permit for the helipad itself was to be applied for, and all of the conditions relative to that use. One more thing, just wanted to focus on why we're here today, and it's for the board to consider this conditional use permit. I appreciate the comments about the FAA and the health services. That is not something that this board can take into consideration. Your task is to look at the conditional use permit that is required for this use and the previous conditions that you put on, and whether or not you want to consider amending those based on what the applicant has submitted. The CMU wall, the wood fence, or the mixture of the two was the third option. So the question before the board is, are you wanting to revoke it completely? And then we'll work with legal to figure out what the enforcement of that would look like. Are you wanting to leave the conditions as they are, requiring the 6-foot masonry wall? Or are you wanting to amend the conditional use permit to change the screening type as proposed by the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments from fellow board members and staff. I don't think anybody is disagreeing that need exists. If one of us was in a life-threatening situation, we'd want whatever it took to take care of us. And that's the way we addressed this in the November meeting. A lot of thought went into what is the need and how do we work with that. As such, and hearing from the community, the two conditions or the three conditions that we put in place were well thought out by the board. As I think I said earlier, if there's a patient there, regardless of whether there's an official helipad or not. And I appreciate very much. It's not a helibase. It is a helipad. That was helpful. They're going to land in the parking lot, or at least I sure hope they'll land in the parking lot to pick me up and take me where I need to go. So I think what we're up against here is some expedience. I was kind of surprised. It's been 6-7 months since we approved this with the conditional use permit. I'm inclined to suggest to the board that we leave our decision that we put together in place, and perhaps add a fourth that says complete the conditions that we had within a time period. I'm not sure what that should be. My first thought is 90 days. I think it ought to be expedient. I think the hospital needs to hear what the community has said and pay some extra money, get it done. As I said earlier, the $100,000 cost, we as a board had said it should be a block wall. It should be a block wall. So just pass that along to my fellow board members.
Mary Frederickson, I don't see that giving a time deadline is going to be helpful here. We gave a timeline to a degree with condition number 3, which is do not use that helipad until you comply with conditions 1 and 2. And there was a 4-month period between the November meeting when we set that out and the March approval with the air ambulance company to begin using the helipad. 4 months, no progress towards either 1 or 2 to be started, much less completed. And frankly, number 3 has been completely ignored. That is, they have used the helicopter pad, and I can appreciate that it's only been 4 times within the last 3 months. So to me, that does not seem overly burdensome. I haven't heard anybody suggest that this is going to be a nightly occurrence, and clearly it has not been a nightly occurrence. 4 flights over your property in 3 months does not seem overly burdensome to me when weighed against the potential for loss of life if there is a delay in getting a patient to a trauma center, an appropriately leveled trauma center. Frankly, I can appreciate the thoughts of the local property owners. Nonetheless, weighed against the need of the community, I would vote the same way today. Nonetheless, the fact that we put conditions on that have not been addressed by the hospital and blown off condition number 3 tells me I will vote for revocation. They can start over. The city can arm wrestle whether or not zoning needs to be adapted, and frankly, I don't think it does. Conditional use versus special use permitting. The fact that it's a helipad, in my view, as opposed to a heliport with fuel storage and storage of the helicopter, makes the difference in my view. Nonetheless, what's in front of us today is, do we revoke it or not? The third option being modified. I don't see any benefit to modifying when the hospital has not engaged at all in satisfying 1, 2, and they've blown off 3. So there's my position.
Mr. Chairman, my comments. I agree with my colleague, Mary Frederickson. I look back at the minutes. In fact, I printed them out. I usually use the computer, right? But I had to print them out and go over and over. We were definitely frustrated as a board. I think most of us were frustrated as a board as the way this process unfolded. There's a gray area in the code about what's allowed and what zone and so forth, which I expressed concern about at the last meeting. But we put a Band-Aid and attempted to do a fix on something that was probably erroneously processed. And it didn't sit well with me, but at the same time, we thought we needed to make a decision because there's all good points about the service needed for the hospital and the care and the need for a helipad. So I'm also not compelled to make any changes to the use permit, and I'm not really compelled to ignore the decision. I am more compelled to revoke this permit.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to ask a question of the attorney.
Go ahead.
Have you ever done any personal injury or wrongful death?
Do you want me to address this gentleman? I represent the board. If it's something you're interested in, let me know. If not.
Well, just the fact that you're an attorney and you know some.
Well,
but
ask your question.
Okay, my question is, what abandoning this thing or whatever you're going to do, or negating it, what liability does that put on this board function, whatever? Does it put a city in a liability? You know, it's more or less established. Granted, they haven't done what they've told. They don't have that little bit of integrity, but the bottom line is they're trying to save lives. And when you come to wrongful death and all that, and you got somebody with enough money or big enough insurance policy on them, you're dealing with insurance companies that would just love to get your money. And personally, in my work life, I've dealt with that. And boy, if they find a little crack, they're right there. And, you know, you're up the creek without the paddle, and you'll be paying.
Thank you. Well, I'm not an attorney either, so I'm not going to comment.
Well, that's why I asked for reference from the one that was present.
I understand that, but we can't.
Order.
Yes.
I'm going to suggest that we're getting some opinions here. And
I think public comment is over.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you're ready to make a motion.
No.
So, from a standpoint of emotion, I appreciate the frustration of my fellow board members that things aren't moving forward rapidly. Brief question for staff: is some of the approval of this and getting things done, is the city, I don't want to say part of the problem, but part of the process that is taking some time?
The current building permit for the helipad and such is out for corrections, so it's on the applicant. It's in their, the ball's in their court right now.
So corrections, then approval, and
then we review. So they're going to provide the corrections required. We'll re-review it to make sure everything's addressed that's required. And then either they have more corrections or the building permit is issued and they do the work.
And then they do the work. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So again, to my fellow board members, perhaps the best way to approach this is to do nothing as a board and to leave this with the city to complete the process, and to, if there's citations, fines, let the city go down that path. And I'm just very troubled by setting back the infrastructure and the need that we have as a community by taking away a valid helicopter landing site versus a parking lot, or closing the street and coming down between power lines to rescue someone in need. So just leave it there.
Board member, I can appreciate that. As I said, I voted to approve the CUP last November. If it was before us again, I would vote for it again. Nonetheless, it's been 8 months since we set these conditions to the hospital, and they have not complied. And we can't just turn our back and say, well, maybe they will sometime in the future, but we're just going to let it go along. And maybe the city can undertake enforcement action. And I believe I heard from Tammy, Ms. DeWitt, that the necessary for enforcement first is coming to the board and asking for revocation because the applicant has not complied with the conditions that we've set. And I think we need to take that first step, and then the applicant can do the next thing, which is to move forward to comply with conditions set, thinking that these are conditions that will be set in the future when they come back to us for another permit. But our task today is to look at the conditions. Have they met them? Are they in violation? Have they used the permit without satisfying the conditions? That is correct. And I think we need to hold them accountable. For as much as I think the helicopter service, ambulance service for this hospital is the correct move, nonetheless, we cannot just turn away and say, well, yeah, I guess they didn't do what we told them to do. Oh, well, I think we need to revoke.
Chairman, if I can ask Tammy, Mr. Witt, the revocation would start the process appropriately to correct the situation? I want to make a clarification on what the staff would prefer to do.
Well, it's not a staff preference. It's a matter for the board to consider whether or not revocation is appropriate. There are alternate civil remedies we can take. We're not just constrained to the hearing officer process. Revocation, if the council decided they want to pursue some sort of legal action, would be a cleaner process because they'll no longer have any rights under the conditional use permit. Of course, they do have, if you were to choose to revoke, appeal rights to the Superior Court within 30 days if they wanted to challenge your decision to revoke. If you choose not to revoke and just let it go, then we'll take that under advisement and see if there are alternate means for enforcement for violation of the CUP as it exists now. Or you can consider some of the alternatives that they're suggesting with a combination wood fence, block wall fence. It would be unfair to say the staff has a preference. Tammy, I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Correct.
Chair, just to move along to see how people are thinking, I'll move to approve. I don't know, procedurally, is this the same CUP number from November?
So you're going to move to amend or revoke CUP 24-004.
Thank you. I'll move to revoke CUP 24-002 as set forth in the November 2024 meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further comment? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
I think that's 4-2.
Correct. 4-2.
So the motion passed. Do we have updates?
We have no updates for you today. We do have a meeting in July, though, just so you know. Sorry.
With that, the meeting is adjourned.